Welcome to the Elevated Coach Podcast. I am your host, Joel Burgess, and it is my goal that with this podcast, you are fueled with all the tools, techniques, strategies, systems, and insights to become more potent and powerful in your coaching and more profitable in your business. The podcast is a mix of solo episodes and interviews with incredible coaches doing amazing things. I really hope that you enjoyed today's show, and if you do, go ahead and share it with a coach that you think would benefit from it. Let's get stuck in and sending you so much love. We are live and second time lucky. So really looking forward to today's conversation, Chris. I feel like we've got so many things aligned, synergies and what have you. So on this podcast, I have a tradition that the last guest asks the first question for the new guest. So last guest asks you this question: what's been one of the most terrifying and life-changing experiences that you're proud of and the biggest insight that it brought?
I mean, the first thing that came to mind was the separation from my wife. The piece that I'm proud of actually is the reconciliation and us getting back together after 3 years apart. It was extremely challenging, honestly. And really proud of the fact that we were able to navigate that. And a lot of the work that I've done internally opened me up to be the man I needed to be to reconciliate. And also my partner, Danielle, you know, she done a lot of work in our absence and separation. So I think that like stood out. The second you said terrifying and life-changing, it was that moment. It like really forced me to look at every piece of myself that was contributing to the separation, you know?
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think a quote that I'm really sitting with at the moment is that all growth starts with telling the truth. And I can only imagine in that process, like it would have been the fact you're back together now, like that almost says for me, like more about you in terms of the willingness to sit in that discomfort. You know, I imagine it would have been far easier to leave that, right? Than, you know, running away would have been easier. I'm using my own language here, of course, but yeah, I'm acknowledging you for that.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
like it's this quote of all growth starts with telling the truth have been really sitting with recently, because like what I've noticed about my own mind is like a master at lying to itself, like a master manipulator. And it's so easy to believe our own lies, right?
Yeah, I think I would notice this about like even little things. I would inflate stories or I would change details, and I think we all do it. You know, I say that and sometimes I get a little nervous like sharing that, like, oh, people are going to think Chris is weird, he does all of it. But like I think we as humans, we glorify things so that we can fit in. And I heard my friend Craig, he said a quote by Brené Brown was that fitting in is absence of true belonging. And I think that sometimes is really important for us to acknowledge and understand. It's more about us having the ability to tell the truth in spite or fear of someone leaving than it is to create a white lie that keeps someone around.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. I don't know, I know you've done a lot of men's work, and for me, the men's work that I've done this has been a big thing for me, because I'm innately, or like I'm a people pleaser, sort of conditioned people pleaser. You know, I'm exceptional at making friends and fitting in and like life and soul of the party. And I remember we had on the last day of this men's retreat I went on recently, we had this dark arrow circle where we call someone to the middle that we've got, you know, friction between or tension between, and we call that out and we speak to it. And no one called me into the middle. And I remember being a little bit annoyed, like, why is no one called me into the middle? And I spoke to my friend about it. He's like, you're just too nice. And and actually I took it as like, like maybe I need to be more direct, and maybe I need to be like speak my truth more. And if I feel a certain way, like actually lean into that. And it's been a real edge for me, is just actually sharing how I feel, and if something doesn't land right, like not being afraid of like sharing that and not being afraid of hurting someone's feelings. And it's been a real growth edge for me, and especially in men's work. So now I'm in certain men's containers and brotherhoods and what have you, where it's just welcome to like speak your truth and share direct feedback, and so much growth has come from that. Have you had any similar experiences with that kind of nice guy syndrome, or are you more of someone who actually thrives in conflict? Because I actually remember in this dark arrow circle, they asked like who thrives in like who thrives in conflict, and like 50% or 40% of men put their hand up. I was like, sorry, what? You like conflict? I was so shocked because I'm like, that is so foreign to me. So where do you sit on where do you sit on that sort of conflict, people pleaser?
I actually would consider myself somebody who tends to stay on the I don't know, it's hard because when I get the men to reflect back for me in men's circles, they don't see me the same way that I see myself. And so I often have a view of myself from when I was like 16, 17, 18, playing football and being in dressing rooms and not feeling like I fit in and not really speaking up for anything and really just kind of being passive. But yeah, I don't particularly enjoy conflict. And I do think that in men's work, the beautiful part of it is that if you can find a group of men that welcome challenge and there's equal parts love and challenge, then we can all be pretty direct. I would consider myself a very direct person today, but that's definitely trained, and it's definitely through a lot of work and a lot of, I've been consultant for 11 years. And I think when you're consulting with people in their businesses, you can't afford to be sugarcoating things at times. And so it's definitely been a trained muscle for me, but I don't thrive in conflict, especially with the feminine. That's something that I don't enjoy at all.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on the same wavelength. I've very much trained myself to be okay in conflict, and I agree. Like, I think you cannot be an effective coach or consultant without being willing to call out the truth. And I think actually in the coaching world, we need far more truth slaying than pandering, and making them feel good. I think we can all have contracts where we make our clients feel good, but actually, are they growing? What in your experience, like what gets in the way of that truth slaying, and actually, because we know it's better for our clients, but what do you think gets in the way of that?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, right? There's a couple of core wounds that I think really hold people back, and it's the fear of abandonment and rejection. I think at times, I think we can pander to people in order to not upset them so that they can stay around, especially in business. If you've got clients and you're coaching a lot, and you see something and you don't want to accept, I don't know, like I'm pretty direct. I always ask for permission today. Like, I think that's the thing. The key is like, hey, do you mind if I'm direct with you? Or do you mind if I share like a truth? Do you mind if I share what I see? And I think the thing that holds people back is that they're afraid that if they upset someone, that they'll leave. And that's truthfully, I think it's the core wound of many people. It's either like the feeling of rejection or abandonment. And I think that's the core of lacking truth and honesty. It's like there's a balance though also between what's a projection and what is actual truth. And I think that's where skilled people need to do deep work. If you are a coach and you're teaching people and you're sharing things, and especially in the business arena, but more so like with your clients, I remember being a 23-year-old PT just telling my clients, like, shut up, it's not that hard. Like, eat well, train 5 times a week and and get some sleep. And yet at that time, I wasn't a family man. I didn't have kids. I was single. I lived on my own. Like, there were a lot of things that I had that were like my own projections of how easy it was. Now, as a 37-year-old, way more mature man, having been through a lot of life experience, I understand that direct advice at that time was actually my own projection, not truth.
Yeah, I can so resonate. I think you talk of on your Instagram like clean client creation. I think this is really relevant here, right? Where I was speaking to a client the other day, and that they're exhausted with client delivery, and we unearthed essentially because they're taking all of the responsibility of their clients, like all of their results, and they're taking personal responsibility for that. And I think it's such a delicate thing in the coaching world, right? Is where we're potentially making promises about what we can help them, our clients, with, but ultimately we're not responsible for them. And
Yeah.
I've been on that journey where I took responsibility for their results, and it led me to like kind of losing myself in that process. Over delivering, doing their work for them, and kind of actually taking their power away, like actually weakening them. And I know this is a topic that you've spoken about on your Instagram, this sort of how the polarity of being a coach, right? Of where, one day your client's making 60 grand, I think you said in a post, and another day, on the same day, someone is complaining about not getting results and then canceling. It's
Yeah.
just like a totally wild ride. And I think it's why we all have to do that inner work. But what have been some of the ways that you've like healed those core wounds of rejection and abandonment?
Yeah. Well,
Because I think
I'm like,
this is some of the most important.
yeah. I mean,
No, I
I
was just going
agree
to say this is some of the most important work that us coaches can do.
1,000%. I mean, I am a codependent, and for me, two things I do. I rescue people, and I'm codependent. So when that comes down to a coaching arrangement, we don't realize, like the young version of me didn't realize that all of my strengths and gifts were also all of my wounds. So the way in which I was great at retaining clients, well, of course I was. I'm codependent and I don't want anyone to leave me. So it's like I built that strategy of like good retention over delivering so that people would stay. And it's only when you begin to get deeper into your business career, you start to realize that when a client leaves and it hurts as much as a breakup, that's not okay. And I think that was the point for me. There's a big turning point about like 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 years ago now. And I was in the midst of the separation. I was very much in a turmoil at the time, and I had like 8 clients cancel at once in the same week and go to a different provider. And like all 8 of them went to an entirely different company. And I already felt like their ads were like directed towards me. I already felt like their stuff was directed towards me. And that was my own stuff. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Who knows? But I very much attached myself at that moment in time to them, and it fucking broke me down. I was in Istanbul. I took a week away on my own, had a little solo vacation, and like the 8th client canceled, and I just sat in this like coffee shop. I'm, other side of the world on my own, should be having the time of my life, and I just bawled in tears. And I'm like, this is not okay. Like I can't do this anymore. And I had built a relatively successful company. Like I built it to the level that I wanted to, but I was taking way too much responsibility for client results, way too much. And as the codependent rescuer, I was literally like going into people's businesses, grabbing it by the scruff of the neck, and be like, let me help you. And I'm somewhat still in like the old version of me will slip back into that very quickly. So I have to be very mindful of it. Like if I have a slow period or a client isn't getting results like the way in which I would like them to, or fear that they're going to leave, or fear that they're going to cancel, or fear that I'm not bringing value to them, then I can slip into that pattern very quickly. And having the awareness, I think what they say is right. Like the trigger is the wound. The response is the level of healing that you hold. And so gradually over time, I've had the ability to slow down and separate the speed of my response to a trigger. I've had more compassion for self, more ability to like hold that, to nurture self, to regulate. But it's still hard, man. I think we all have stuff, and our personal stuff often gets in the way of our business growth.
Yeah, it's totally. What I find hard in this space is that like there's still wisdom in over delivering. In fact, it's something I kind of speak to. Right, is under promise and over deliver, and I think that's how to keep clients and retain clients. But where's the line? Like, where's how do you bring awareness to like what's wisdom and over delivering and just good smart business versus like where are you actually, where is this driven by a wound, like how to tune into that, because it's so nuanced, right? Like where's the line for you, and how do you bring awareness to that?
Yeah, I think really it's having awareness of the fuel behind it. And so like, where are you fueling this from? Is this so that you get the recognition and praise from the client? Are you seeking acknowledgement? Are you looking for, are you looking for reward? Like if I give them this, then I will get something back in return, which is actually for self. That's not for other, right? And I think having an awareness of that, like when you do something for someone, are you doing it so that you either alleviate anxiety or stress or pressure, or so that you get some kind of acknowledgement or kudos? And rarely have I seen in my own business or clients that like when that happens, a good outcome happens. Rarely is that the case. In fact, the more that I engage in that behavior of rescue and overdoing so that it's like, it's almost proving that I have my worth and value. The more that I do that, the worse the relationship I have with a client is typically, and I'm generalizing. And so I think it's really important to ask yourself, am I doing this out of anxiety? Is this fear? Or is this out of love, right? Is this the vibration of love and actually truly, genuinely, authentically giving because it's who you are? And it's a very fucking fine line, and it's a tightrope to dance. Because again, like the shadows, our shadows are our gifts, right? Most of us are coaches, teachers, and leaders because we found a way to navigate the world that keeps people around us. Like you said, like this ability to get people to like you is a gift, and it's also from a wounded space. And so we have to be very mindful of that in our coaching business. It's like, yes, it's an amazing, magical skill. And it's the integration of that and the healthy relationship with the ability to get people to like you, like the magnetism that you cultivate is very different to having a strategy so that people don't leave you and they stay around. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I think you've really articulated beautifully there. Like, what is the fuel? Just tuning into that. It's so fucking wild. This shadow and the gift coming up from our shadow. I experienced this recently. So my wound, I suppose, my desire is like I want to be seen. Like it's my greatest desire is like to be seen, to be acknowledged. But the paradox of it is that I also almost can't handle being seen. Like when I recall going back to like a men's circle where there's like 45 people there, and sitting around in a circle, I'm like, I really like I want them to see all of me. And, this is such a deep desire of wanting to be seen. And then I get in the middle and like, it feels awful. I just like, get out of here. Like, I don't want to be seen. And it's just this total paradox of like totally wanting to be seen, like in all my like glory and all the shit as well. But like when actually someone sees you, it's overwhelming. Like it can drop you to your knees. Like there's this man I deeply respect, a Portuguese man, and he once said to me, looked me in the eyes and said, Joel, I see you and you live in my heart. And like even now, just saying that, like emotion comes up, and it totally broke me of like this potency of this, this deep desire that we have, but we also kind of can't handle it as well. I don't know if you can resonate with that or have any similar experiences of this
100%
this desire, but actually when you get the desire.
I mean, yeah, like there is so much within it because I don't know. I think how we self-identify. So other people see us in a way that we don't see ourselves. And so I wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily class myself as a charismatic person, but I know when I've done reflections with men around me, they would say I'm a charismatic person. And I think sometimes those are even shadowy things. Like what I'm really working on personally right now are the shadows of like incapable or I don't know how to do this. And I have a few shadows around this that are like really limiting me currently. And sometimes it can like really blow your nervous system out. I'm trying to currently create content that is like, so I have like so much truth in my heart that I share very closely and do very well in podcast scenarios like this or conversation. And then there's another part of me that like online in my other content, I don't feel like I'm able to like transmit that thing yet. I don't feel like I've got the ability to take what I have, the gift that I have, and then translate that into words in the perfectionism that I would like it to be, right? And honestly, like sometimes this like really blows my nervous system out. I create a video and then I'm like, fuck that video. That's not exactly what I want to say. And then I overthink it. And then before I know it, I'm like really in my stuff. And it's this
Mhm.
desire to be seen. And then it's also this like major self-criticism that actually prevents me from being seen. Because for every piece of content that I put out, there's probably like 10 pieces that I don't.
Mm.
And that's a dance between like getting something right and actually like publishing and using quantity to get better at something. So I think that is a dynamic in business. I do think many of us, especially men, we wouldn't be in a business that has a a personal brand attached to it, a front that creates content if we didn't want to be seen, if we didn't have a message, if we didn't have a voice. But then equally,
Mhm.
I look at myself sometimes and then I don't do stories as much as I should. And I'm like, why don't I do stories? Because I'm like, start to think I'm boring. I don't think I'm charismatic enough. I'm not, da 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 da. And it's that piece that blocks us from actually being truly seen and witnessed and known.
Yeah, that certainly resonates. I remember I was very blocked to do stories when I first started this, and I worked with my first coach, a guy called Alistair Gray, and he challenged me to fall in love with myself. He challenged me to fall in love with watching myself, and he gave me a really simple exercise of just smiling whilst watching myself
Yeah.
and watching myself through the lens of love, like almost being in awe of this person. And I felt it so uncomfortable when I first started doing it. It felt almost like don't know the word, but it just felt like really weird. Like it was a little too much. But actually, in time, like I just started noticing myself smiling, watching myself, and just a little smile whilst watching myself really changed my relationship with watching myself. And it's such a small adjustment, but it's made a massive difference for me. But like, I think you're right. Like take my podcast for example. My wife said to me the other day, "It's like you sound amazing at the start of the podcast. Like I'm amazed that you're just churning these out." I'm like, "Love, that one intro took me 30 times." like no
Yeah.
no joke, took me 30 edits. And I think this is like the shadow of, I suppose, social media, right? It's that we see social media, we listen to these podcasts, and we see the final cut, we see the final edit, right? But we don't see the behind the scenes of like the 100 times that you take this stuff, and like how many times you mumble your words, and like you're getting yourself into, like, I sometimes record videos, I get myself into such a state
Mm.
where I'm like, it's like I'm like a crack addict in that moment or something. Like I'm so addicted to getting the perfect, I'm like, what am I doing? But we don't see that. Like no one sees that. They see the finished article, that the last one. But I think honoring the suck is, part of this whole process, right?
No, and I think more people need to speak to it, Like I have worked extremely hard on communication. I am not a natural like speaker. I remember public speaking was the thing that I would hate most. I have YouTube videos from like 13 years ago when I was a personal trainer that I watch back and cringe at. And yet it's like it's it's funny. Like I'm extremely hard on myself. I really am. And I don't do it publicly facing, but those that are close to me will know I have very high standards for myself. And that's a good thing. It's driven me and it's pushed me, but it also means that sometimes it can really limit us as teachers and coaches, and we can allow the perfection. I wouldn't consider myself a perfectionist at all, but I definitely have a shadow of like, this needs to be good, and I will throw 10 things out in order to get the one thing, which I think is a good trait, a resilient trait. But also, I think that people think you literally push record, you hit a video, and it goes out there. And I think that in itself can prevent people from creating. And yeah, like I get the same. I get worked up sometimes. Sometimes I did a video just before like this podcast, and for some reason I had a major feedback loop. Like there was a setting on my mic and it fed back, and I did this 20-minute video. It was amazing. I'm like, oh fuck, I've got to do that again now. So there are also times where like I got myself in the perfect state. I delivered an amazing video, and then I'm like, oh fuck, I've got to do it again. And then now I'm like judging myself on the ability to repeat that and do it as well as I did the last time. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty vulnerable. I'm an open guy. Like I talk about my struggles a lot because I think it's important that other people see that.
Totally. Yeah. I actually find myself almost on the opposite end, where like I've always been a kind of shoot from the hip guy, and sometimes a little irresponsible with that.
Same.
You know, it's got me in some amazing places, but also like some pretty sketchy places where I've regretted it. But yeah, I want to change gear a little bit and actually come to a quote that you and I have spoken over a WhatsApp. And I just want to get your take on this quote because it really connects with me, but I'd love to like hear your meaning. And the quote is, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I started jiu-jitsu 10 years ago for this very reason. And for me, it's like, I want to live my life with a wide open heart, but also know that I could kill a man with my bare hands. And I think that's important. I love the polarity of that. I love the, like, I'm a lover. I'm a big lover, and I lead with an open heart, but also like, I have that in me. I have the capability in me to handle myself. And I think there's like embodiment and confidence that comes from embodiment. And if I was to look at that as like a philosophical quote, as opposed to like a practical quote, like an actuality, I think the philosophizing of that would be like, hey, the embodiment of being a warrior in your everyday life will carry you way further than being out of your depth in an environment where you require a skill set. And so for me, my hope with jiu-jitsu is that I never have to use it, really, truthfully. Yet knowing that I have the skill set, should it be called upon. And I think that's really the important thing. And it allows you to carry yourself in a way different way. And it's like, for me, it was like my first experience of embodiment was jiu-jitsu. Like that was it. And it continues to be. I think every man on the planet should do it, honestly. I got my little boy started jiu-jitsu with me like 3-4 months ago, and I can see the confidence like building in him every day. And it's just fun to see that little journey, you know?
Excuse me for interrupting the show, but I wanted to ask you, have you subscribed yet? I ask because this is a brand new podcast and it will really help me out in my mission to spread coaching as far and wide as possible. I truly believe that coaching can change the world, and your simple subscription helps me out more than you realize. So thank you for your help in advance. And if you feel like this episode might help a friend out or another coach, then go ahead and share it. Thanks in advance, and let's get back into the show. Yeah, I love that. I think there's such a misunderstanding with martial arts and jiu-jitsu. Like, I haven't done any martial arts, but there's a famous kung fu teacher on this island. He's actually world famous. He's one of the most famous in Europe. He teaches Wing Chun, which is like internal kung fu. And I went for a lesson with him, and I was expecting like, right, tell me how to karate chop.
Yeah.
And he was like, we'll spend the first month calling Wu Wei, I think he calls it, of just relaxing.
Yeah.
He was like, that's all we'll do. And he says, you need to quit all lifting weights because your muscles are fake strength. And
Yeah.
actually they're stopping you getting from a deeper level of strength in your tendons, in your fascia. And it completely blew my mind. He reversed everything I thought about martial arts and kung fu. He's like, the kung fu that you see on TV, that's not real kung fu. That's just like westernized kung fu, good for movies. But kung fu is all about actually balance and equanimity. And he says, if someone meets me with 99% yang energy, like aggression, I will meet them with 99% yin energy. And I was like, wow, like I get it. And he said to me, punch me as hard as you can. Right. And I'm like, May, I can't do that to you. With such arrogance. Like, I can't do that to you. I'm a big guy. Like, I'm strong, man. Like, I can't do that to you. He's like, shut up and punch me as hard as you can, like in the face. Right. And so I was like, fuck, I'll do it. And I tried it and it sort of tapped him. He's like, no, come on, harder, harder, harder. And eventually I just swung for him. And he met me like water. Like he was so fluid, and he just casually took my punch and sort of stroked it off me and sort of pushed it back on me. And he said almost what he was doing was converting my energy into the ground and then back at myself. So I was essentially punching the ground through water.
Yeah.
And he threw me back like 2 or 3 meters.
Yeah.
Mind completely blown. And I think our understanding of kung fu is so misunderstood, and I just so resonate with everything you're saying. It's profound.
Well, it's interesting because with jiu-jitsu, and like whenever there's a white belt, right, and whenever like I'm a brown belt now, and they're always like frantic, and their energy is that of like fear, and they try to use a lot of strength. And as you get more skilled, you use less energy and less strength, and you're in a situation where I could be completely chill, not out of breath at all, and like tap someone like 7, 8, 9, 10 times, and they could be completely dead at the end of a 5-minute round just because they're expending so much energy, right? And I think that's it's really about skill set, and it's about understanding, and like you say, there's a depth to things that I believe martial arts gives. I mean, have you ever read the Book of Five Rings? A guy called Musashi, he was a samurai, and he killed like 60 men in a duel. And he wrote in duels over his samurai career, and he wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings. And there's a quote in there, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, you must be as proficient with the pen as you are with the sword. And I think it's such a beautiful quote for me to understand that, like, if you truly want to be like a man of stature or of strength, or quote unquote warrior, you can't live in that energy all of the time. And he was saying like the balance of poetry, with being a warrior, the ability to write and the ability to fight. And I think it honestly is, because the 25-year-old me would not know this, but the 37-year-old me has an awareness of it, and I'm sure the 47-year-old me will understand it even more. But it's really bringing the right energetic and the right archetype to the right situation. And a lot of men, specifically, as speaking as a man to men, I work with a lot of men, is that we try to warrior our way through life. We try to white knuckle, force our way, live through force and domination. And ultimately that it works to a degree, but we can't warrior our way through fatherhood. We can't warrior our way through, husbandry. We can't warrior our way through, through friendships. Like we can't live in that energy at all times, and a lot of men do, and it's very costly. It's energetically demanding, and it causes fracture in your life. You know, I think a big thing for me is I wrote a post the other day, and it's like the money that I actually make in my coaching business happens outside of the things that I actually do that make money. So my personal practice, you know, breath, embodiment, my own like transmission, quote unquote.
Yeah, I so love that. I say to my community all the time, is that the depth of your relaxation fuels the depth of your focus. And like I'm studying, well, not studying, reading Taoism at the moment, and it feels so aligned with everything you're sharing. The whole book is that the premise of the book, I suppose, is well, there's so many messages, but one of the core messages is like the doing of not doing, inaction. And it seems such a paradox, right? And I think for me, like my past self was the warrior, was like pure force. Like, you know, you look at me, I've got a lot of muscles, you know, like I've got here through brute strength. And as you said, it does work. Like I forced my way through life, like total force and power, and brute force, you know, but it only gets you so far. And there was a fear in me that if I let go of that, well, then I'm going to become lazy and soft. And but there's a quote in the Tao Te Ching, which says that the Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. Which talks exactly to this, right? So we innately want to take action. Like a bee isn't taking action, but it's moving, it's working, it's pollinating and making honey and what have you. Like it's taking action, but it's actually not doing anything. And that for me is like what I'm really trying to connect to is actually taking action from inspiration rather action from motivation, because we want to move, we want to build, we innately all have this warrior energy, but like perhaps coming back to what you were sharing earlier is like what's fueling this warrior energy? Is it proving people wrong? Is it validation? Is it a core wound? Or is it inspiration? Is it creation? Is it like love and curiosity and like excitement? And I think it's just when we quieten down and actually tune in and slow things down and relax, like that's when we connect to so much more potent like action. And I'll just make this very real with an example today. Like yesterday, you know, I got all my action done by like 10 a.m. I think it was, or 11 a.m. And my old self was like, right, what should I do next? You know, let's force some other action. I was like, no, sod it. I'm going to go down to the pool and chill, listen to some music down the pool, and just boom, insight. Right, this is it. And I've taken action from it, and things are just landing as a result. I just think there's so much to be said, and I love that quote.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, like structure and flow, right? It's masculine, feminine. It's yin, it's yang. Yeah, a powerful river requires riverbanks. And so for like the river to flow freely, it requires riverbanks. It requires boundaries. It requires the structure that allows flow to happen. And I think that's the beautiful piece of business is if we create structure which allows space for flow will happen more. And I think I mean, the old me could sit at my computer, and the part of me today, even like if I get triggered by fear or anxiety, which we inevitably all do, right? I'm sure no matter how enlightened, no matter how much we evolve, no matter how much we grow, when we're not innate to that. And if we ever get into a place of, oh shit, I need to do something so that I can get something, and we attribute our value to doing, right? So that we get the recognition and praise or whatever it is, the accolade that we want, then very quickly we can fall back into that place. But I think it's the ability to have the discipline of like, this is what I'm building. Here's how I'm going to build it. And I won't step outside of those boundaries. And then, like you say, like majority of insights that you ever have, or you're not going to find the clarity that you want staring at your fucking computer all day. Like you're just not. And clarity often happens away from the desk. Like two types of work that you should do: work that moves projects forward, and work that helps you get clarity around the project. And often that stuff it's breath work, it's meditation, it's walking, it's the gym, it's moving, it's relaxing, it's allowing your mind to just simmer and settle. It's nervous system regulation.
Yeah, I love that. I know, I don't know if you were on that call, but Danny Morel said, I think anything that brings us out of stillness needs a why. And I think what I'm really hearing from this is like really connecting to the fuel. Like what is the why behind this? And a big distinction for me is want versus need. Like that's for me how I get clarity on the fuel is like, what do I want to do in this moment? And sometimes that's work. Or what do I want to, actually, I want to go for a skate, or I want to go to the gym, or I want to just do nothing, or I want to go and sit at the pool. Fear comes from need. Like whenever I find myself, I need to work, I need to send emails, I need to post, I need to do this. It's like, I'm in fear now. I'm in lack. How do you tune into like what your fuel source is? As you say, like, because we're not immune to it. Like it's impossible to escape. How do you tune into that?
I know I have such connection to my body now, which I never used to have, but like I can tell where I'm operating from. And I think it's one of the questions that I always ask my clients, like, where is this coming? Like, where is this question coming from? What place is this coming from? Is this fear, or is this choice and love? Right. And I think I had a coaching call with a client, and he said to me, he just got back off holiday, like day one. We had a call booked in, and he's like really flat, and he's like, I'm just not falling in love with my business anymore. He's hit some big targets, like hit 60K months and stuff, and like really had some big numbers that he wanted to hit. And he was like, unless I am chasing something next, then I find it difficult to get excited about something. I'm like, okay, interesting, because you'll never get out of that. Like that's a zero-sum game, because you'll put a bigger number on the board and you'll get there and you'll realize it didn't feel like you thought it would, and then you'll continue to do the next thing. And I personally think that we have to get attuned to like, where are we fueling things? And at some point, fear and anxiety and stress and worry is great motivation to get us going. We'd be wild not to use that and metabolize that energy, because essentially it's fight or flight energy, right? And we'd be mad in a life or death situation to sit and meditate when we actually need to get up off our ass and do something. And so we need to use this energy. Like there is a reason it's there, right? It doesn't just happen for no reason. We have little control over it. There's a reason that it's there, and it's often because of a misalignment of some description. But we have to get very good at switching that fuel source very quickly. Otherwise, we will live in that state and we will rely upon it for motivation, and we'll find ourselves there often. So we'll put ourselves intentionally into situations where we have to, I had these cycles, and I still can't, honestly, like I'm not immune to this, but I can only teach from my own experience. And it's when I make a chunk of cash, very quickly I start going, oh shit, like what can I buy now? In other words, how do I get rid of all this money so that I can so that I can go through that cycle again, And I think we've got to be very careful of those parts of ourselves, because we're utilizing that fear and that anxiety and that need to get going and to kick us in the ass. At some point, we've got to be comfortable with tranquility as being the fuel.
Mate, this is so on point, and I'm like going through that transition right now. Like I'm
too.
It's almost like I'm trying to train my nervous system for ease, and so I'm really trying to spend time like enjoying simplicity and trying to step into that feminine of receiving. Like every morning now I have my magic moment with my coffee, and I like really try and enjoy it and allow my nervous system to enjoy it, because as you said, like I've been on that cycle. Every time I make a chunk of change, it's like, right, what can I go and do? What can I invest in? What course can I go and do? And my mind is so cunning in those moments, right? Because it's like, well, you'll learn and you'll get better, and it'll allow you to get to the next stage. And there's wisdom in that. And part of me is like, that is true. But there's also a lot of that, which is like, you're self-sabotaging because you are totally addicted to stress. Your nervous system doesn't know anything apart from force, stress, fear. And like, it's so known to me that I'm like, well, there's another way. And I'm really going through this right now. And I had my coach recently pull me up on it, where he's like, I know it was actually a year ago or so. So I just created a corporate client, right? And it was so easy and a load of money. And I was sharing about it, and he was like, what's next? And I was like, yeah, I think what I'm going to do is create this new program for, and he's like, sorry, you just told me that you made a load of money, you're really enjoying it, and it was really easy. So you're going to go and do something completely opposite. And I was like, I see. I see my pattern. And it's wild the lengths we'll go to feel that stress again.
Well, yeah, I mean, Joe Dispenza would say we're addicted to the hormones of stress, right? And we're addicted to that feeling. And for a lot of us, it's a familiar feeling. We are trained in the creation of stress and anxiety. We're not very well trained in the creation of peace and stability and safety. And I think we have to train ourselves. Like most of us are in recovery. So if we were addicted to a substance, drugs, we would know that like there are things that we have to do every day in order to stay in recovery, and there is healing to do so that we don't slip backwards. But because it's not deemed as, society doesn't deem working extremely hard, living out of fear and stress, and busting your ass as dangerous, it becomes so normalized. And for a lot of us, like I know personally, like I am in recovery from living in that space. And again, like going through my separation, I think took so much out of me, like nervous system wise, that I am dancing on a line often. And that's why I'm so deeply invested in, I mean, two entirely different worlds. Like I help people with their business, but then I'm also like deeply in like excavation and self-development and personal growth and like deep work, ancestral work, and healing deep wounds and a lot of other pieces of that, because I can't imagine myself living how I did 10 years ago for another decade.
Yeah, man, it's like anyone on this path, just I shared it the other day. Like, it's wild that on one day you can be bawling your eyes out like a baby, connected to your inner child, your inner boy, healing those wounds, and then 4 hours later holding space like an authority and a leader.
Yeah.
It's just, as you say, it's such a polarity that we go through in this journey.
I think that's the rightful path, though. Like I don't think you can be so disconnected from emotional experience and then hold space for other people. I think it's part one of the same. And
totally,
I would never do anything. I would never expect anything my clients that I wouldn't do times two with a tip on top. Like I make sure that I go to the depth and the extreme. And some of my greatest success stories of clients are like, hey, Chris, I went to that therapist that you recommended, and I'm like 3 sessions in, and thank you so much for like showing up so openly and vulnerably for that, because you give me permission to do so. Like that, even though the same client grew their business by 10 grand a month, is a bigger win for me, because that person's going to show up as a better parent, And that's a huge responsibility karmically for the next generation of our entire family. And so our ability
Yeah,
and
totally. I
yeah,
remember. Yeah. I remember a mentor once said to me, you can't take someone where you haven't been yourself. And I think it was some of the best advice I got, right at my start of the journey, where I was perhaps a little bit gung ho, shoot from the hip, perhaps a little bit overconfident, arrogant, and it really humbled me. And I now really, it's every relationship with any client now is so precious and delicate, and it's so important. And it's so important to do this work because of exactly that. Because I can now hold space for others because I've been there. And I think, as you said, you can't do this work without doing the internal work yourself. Um, yeah. I want to change gears a little bit and talk about money. You've worked with some 7-figure business owners, and you've helped grow a lot of businesses yourself, and you've taken had some big growth in your own personal business. But like, what have you learned about money? And I know it's a big question. So like, what's been some of your one of your biggest lessons around money and making money?
man, well, my first one is I'm very good at making it, and I'm also extremely good at spending it. So that's that's my first lesson.
Snap.
I don't think twice about investing in education. I think I joined 2 programs in the last. Well, I rejoined one. I rejoined 2 programs actually simultaneously within the same week, and then decided I was going to Bali for 6 weeks with my family. So yeah, I'm extremely good at investing it into experiences and growth. Man, I learn about this a lot, and it's probably my biggest. It's my biggest area to focus on right now. And I think money is easier to make than we think it is, harder to keep around. And I think it fucks a lot of people up, honestly. Like thinking about what they could, because what you charge as a coach is simultaneously intrinsically linked to the value you place upon yourself. And so if you're operating in a low self-worth place, then instantly you're going to devalue the services that you have. And I think it really comes down to your ability. Like, I believe the money that you attract into your life is rooted in, I mean, it's not true because there's a lot of people that have inflated egos and make a fuck ton of money. But I think at least the people in my world is that the work around money is self-worth orientated. Because you can make a lot of money and be completely emotionally disconnected from it and just make money for making money's sake. But I think if you're the kind of person, and I assume the people that are listening to this, and I'm trying to tune the advice to those people, are like heart-centric, they're emotionally intelligent, they actually give a fuck, they want to help people, right? When we operate from that space and our work is everything to us, then money and self-worth are like 2 things absolutely interlinked. And I think if you want to attract more money, the first thing is to root yourself in belief and worth. And if someone says no to a program, it doesn't mean that you're less worthy. If they say it's too expensive, it doesn't mean that you're less worthy or that you're overestimating what you can charge. And I think the second piece, which is actually my big work right now, is that I'm worthy of holding it. My teacher, John Wineland, right? We were away in Shasta 3 months ago. He said something really profound. He was like, people are waiting for you to build your palace and your kingdom so that they can hand you their riches. And he was like, when you begin to get your shit together in a way that people can see, he's like, money will flow like you've never seen it flow before. And I thought that was so profound. It's like the work of money for me right now, at least in my own life, is like really rooting in 2 things, like building the kingdom that is worthy of holding the riches. And I think that's my work, like the personal journey. Hopefully that's useful.
Yeah, man. I think you and I are on Yeah, it is very useful. I think you and I are on a very similar journey there. Very good at making it, very good at spending it very quickly and getting myself back into that cycle. I think, yeah, there's so much insight in that. I would want to kind of draw it to a close with some quick fire questions. So first of all, what advice would you give to yourself when you just started as a coach? Like, I think you've been in this 12 or 14 years. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I've been coaching full time since 2009, like full time self-employed. I've been coaching since I was 15, 37 now. But yeah, I think advice as a coach is probably charge less than you think you should, experiment a lot. And then the second that you start getting results in a specific mechanism, build a system around it and then repeat that system. And I always say to clients, like, you can always charge more, but it's hard to go backwards, right? Because the second that you sell somebody into a program and then you offer it for less to someone else, it becomes very difficult. So I would rather that people know, like, in their heart, like, I could charge 10 times this and it would be a fucking steal than it would be to charge too much and they blow their nervous system out because they're trying to sell something super premium and they don't feel yet capable of commanding that fee.
Totally love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And what advice would you 10 years from now say to you now?
I think just like trust that the path is the right path and all the hardship is fucking the way. The hardship is the way. Like, stop trying to avoid the hardship. It is actually part of the process. It's actually pieces fall into place.
And what's your favorite coaching question?
It's a great question. I coach pretty intuitively, actually. I wouldn't say that I have a specific question. I coach very intuitively and like often things just like come through me. I think it's something why related, honestly, or like where is this coming from, or why is that the thing that you want to do? I think where is this coming from is probably the thing that I ask a lot, because I want to know like what is the source of the thing that they're asking me. Trying to understand like the root and trying to peel that back, I think is super important.
Yeah, I love that. I think exploring the where is so powerful. Yeah, I love that. And finally, if you could broadcast a message on national TV or worldwide TV, what would it say?
Heal yourself so you can heal others.
A big theme of today, along with ease and yeah, so much. It's been a beautiful conversation. Where can people find more about you? I'll put the links in the show notes, but yeah,
it's actually funny.
More about you?
Part of my perfectionism has actually decided to create like brand new profiles on YouTube and Instagram. I don't know why I did it, but so I've got It's Chris Brown Daily, but my main one is It's Me Chris_Brown. Just hit me on Instagram.
Nice. Yeah, I can personally testify that some of your posts are absolute gold. So yeah, give them a follow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for today, Chris. It's been such a pleasure. And hopefully we'll do one in like a nice proper studio in the UK one day where there's no time delay on the connection.
Please, I've got a great studio in Liverpool.
Nice, let's make it happen.
I've got a question for your next guest, by the way. Don't let me go without that question.
Yeah, no, I won't. Yeah, we'll come to that now. Okay, man, hanging up. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, go ahead and share it with a friend, a coach, or anyone that you feel could benefit. It helps them out, it helps me out. I think it's just a kind thing to do. And if you haven't, make sure you're subscribed. I'm just getting started with this podcast. I've got so many amazing episodes, so much value, so many guests planned. It's really my goal to make this the one place you want to come to for all things coaching and the business of coaching. And come say hi, send me a message on Instagram. I don't bite hard. I don't bite. I am friendly, and I'd love to meet you and answer any questions that you have and just have a good conversation. And would love to hear your thoughts on today's episodes too. Anyway, I will see you around, sending you so much love, and have a beautiful rest of your day.